Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei Was Betrayed by the Faction and Got Trained by Ban Part 1. Before we start, please go support the salary per 301 for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some wrong he or she calling here because it's translated, so let me clear this. Issei is a male in this story. Prologue. Authors Pav. We are located in an island nation in the Pacific Ocean. I am talking more specifically about Japan, which is known for things like its imperial palaces, mountainous national parks and temples. But Japan is best known for its capital, which is none other than Tokyo, mixing the ultra-modern and the traditional, from neon-lit skyscrapers to historic temples. But leaving that aside, we will concentrate on a certain city called Kuo and one of its most famous academies. In this academy we can see an 18-year-old boy, short brown hair with two extensions hanging parallel to his neck, was leaving his classroom. This boy was none other than Issei Haidu, the current Tsukuruite and the hero of the factions. Issei's Pav. It's been more than 5 months since the war against Kulipith ended, and we luckily managed to seal 666, or better known as the Beast of the Apocalypse, Trihixa. However, despite having achieved all that, a feeling has been gnawing at me for a long time. That feeling was nothing more than the possible return of Kulipith, and I know that it sounds impossible since after all we have also dismantled it, in addition to the fact that the soldiers of this organization who survived assured and swore on their lives that apart from Risavim, there was no one else giving the orders. I didn't believe that for anything in the world. Even if Risavim, Euclid or any other person affiliated with Kulipith is dead, we still had the people who shared and supported the old man's vision from the shadows. So I had no choice and started looking for clues or something that would guide me to those people who were helping Risavim in secret. Not having anyone's support, I had no choice but to go by myself to different parts of the world, be it supernatural or human, going to the Kulipith bases which we made our own, to find out if there was a hidden file or a secret room that could help me. I even contacted Ajuka-san and Shembazai-san about the files and machines they obtained from those bases to test and investigate them, although in the end they ended up sending me the files since they were very busy and focused on the machines. But when I saw all those files, I must admit that for a moment I thought my head was going to explode from the incredible amount of paperwork there was. At that very moment I understood how the leaders felt when they had to deal with paperwork. Anyway, I left all the boxes of files in a room a few doors down from mine, and since I was going to be spending my days with paperwork, I also decided to study at least a little to improve my grades at the academy. At first it was completely difficult for me to the point of leaving all that aside and spending time with the girls because I began to distance myself a lot from them, but I didn't do it because I needed to make sure that my feeling was true, that there were still people who were allied to Kulipith from the shadows. But after a long time, I managed to discover a piece of a map on a paper in one of the files I was looking at. The way I discovered that is because I accidentally knocked over a glass of water that wet a huge amount of papers. So using Ka-san's clothesline wires in her hairdryer, I started to dry the papers that got wet, but thanks to the light in the room I could notice that. Well, without wasting any time I exposed all the papers to the light to look for the other pieces of the map, which I managed to do a week and a half after discovering that. But once I gathered all the papers, I realized that the map took me to a part of the Amazon jungle for some reason. I had planned to go with the girls to that place to at least spend some time together, but they rejected me immediately. To be honest, that made me a little sad, but I chose to respect their decision and went to that place alone. When I got to the Amazon jungle, I let myself be guided by the map to where I should go. It took me a long time to find that place, and when I found it, there was nothing, just trees, plants, and many insects that were already starting to bother me. I was just going to leave that place and continue with my life, ready to throw everything away, but when I was about to leave, I felt like I stepped on something metallic, which I stepped on again in that place, and yes, there was something metallic there. So without wasting any time, I pushed aside all the leaves and plants with my hands, finding a slightly rusty metal hatch. I had no words to describe the happiness I felt at that moment, as I had to spend a lot of time going from one place to another, being locked in a room with papers to find this. Without even caring about anything, I destroyed that hatch, and without wasting any time I went down sliding with the help of the ladder that was there. After a while I reached the end where the stairs ended. When I looked around I could see that the whole place had hundreds and hundreds of shelves, boxes and folders everywhere. Without hesitation, I took some folders as well as some boxes and left that place, but not before putting the hatch back in the place where it was and covering it with something. After that I went straight home. When I arrived, I just left the folders and boxes of files in my file room and then went to take a quick shower. However, when I returned to see what those folders and boxes contained, I ended up being surprised that all the files that I kept stored in that room for a long time disappeared out of nowhere. I'd be lying if I didn't want to kill you at that moment, but I decided to go back to that underground vault in the Amazon jungle, and when I got there I ended up finding nothing. The bookshelves I saw a few hours ago also disappeared, and without a doubt, someone must have noticed or was aware of my recent activities, including my discovery of the archive vault, as it was no coincidence that I found all of this and then, upon returning home, in just a few minutes, everything I discovered was gone just like that. And it's more than obvious that no one was going to believe me without proof. I have no files, I have no names, I have no source, I have nothing to prove what happened that day. Even the girls I love won't believe what he said, although Drake could help prove that everything I did is true, but the bad thing is that I haven't had contact with him for a long time, and I doubt he saw what I've done. To sum it all up in a few words, there is someone, or at least there was someone, who has been watching me in addition to being aware of my activities, and because of that I end up losing important files, not only those from that lair, but also the files that Ajuka-san and Shembazai-san gave me. But anyway, I started this alone and I plan to face this alone, even if I have to deal with the loss of those files. Authors POV. Currently we see how Issei was leaving his classroom because it was recess time. The brown-haired boy was still upset for having lost all those files, although he couldn't help but wonder how they could get into his house and more into that room as if nothing. However, Issei didn't notice that he ended up crossing paths with Kiba passing by without greeting the blonde because he was rambling things inside his head. Kiba. Issei-kun, Butchu wants to see you at the hidden club, he said with a serious tone, drawing Issei's attention, who just turned to look at his friend. Issei. Hi Kiba, how have you been? Well, I'm the same. You know, how about you stop talking to me like that? He said in a somewhat serious and annoyed tone, since for some reason Kiba and the others acted that same way with him, and only with him. Kiba. Just don't make Butchu wait, he said with a serious tone, walking towards the occult club. Issei. Sigh, I still don't understand what's going on or what problem he has with me, he whispered in a somewhat serious tone, just to go to the occult club. Issei. Drake, if you're awake and listening to me, I need you to talk to me or tell me something now. He contacted his tenant, but he didn't deign to say even a single letter. Not hearing anything from the Welsh dragon, Issei only became more upset, since not only was Kiba acting weird, but also the girls, the leaders and even his parents. He practically had no idea what he did or said for everyone to act cold and serious with him. After a few minutes, Issei arrived at the old building where the members of the occult club meet, although the brunette felt a strange sensation, as if something bad was going to happen in there. But in the same way, Issei entered the club meeting his entourage companions, although the leaders of allied factions were also there. Issei was going to greet them all, but he could feel how the atmosphere of the place was very tense and hostile, causing the brown-haired boy to be on guard out of pure instinct while being completely attentive. However, two swords pierced his chest and stomach, leaving the brown-haired boy stupefied. Those responsible were none other than Kiba and Zenobia, who only removed their swords from the brown-haired boy's body, causing him to kneel in pain and spit out a mouthful of blood, but after that Issei looked at the people in front of him, looking at them with hatred. Issei. Why are you doing this to me? He said, asked with a tone full of pain, but also full of anger and hatred. Searches. Shut your mouth, traitor, he said in a serious and contemptuous tone, hitting Issei in the face. However, Issei received another blow to the face to continue being beaten until the person responsible for doing that stopped. The brown-haired boy only opened his eyes, being completely stunned, seeing and realizing that his own father and progenitor hit him. Issei. Tusan, why he didn't finish speaking because he received another blow from his father. Boru. Don't call me father, I'm not the father of a bastard like you, understood? My only daughter is and always will be Asia, he said with a serious tone, spitting in Issei's face and returning to where Mickey was. Azazel. You will no longer be received, much less welcomed, in Grigori, said the former leader of the Fallen in a serious tone. Michael. You won't be welcomed into heaven either, even if you die, he said seriously and sharply, looking piercingly at the brown-haired boy. Isaka. You will be even less welcomed in Kyoto, she said in a poisonous tone and full of contempt towards the man who in the future was going to be her husband. Auden. Just like in Asgard, he said in a serious and firm tone, being disappointed in his partner in perversions. Searches. And much less will you be welcomed into the underworld. Issei. Damn them, he thought seriously, looking at everyone with hatred. Until when will I get my reward? Asked the arrogant tone of a boy who appeared among the leaders. His name is Takato Saiho, in case there is a Fujoshi among my audience. Rias. Have a little patience, Kisu-kun, we're almost done, she said in a flirtatious tone, with a big smile. Kisuk. Then hurry up, dear, you've made me wait more than enough, he said in a seductive tone, slapping Rias on the butt. Azazel. Don't worry, I'll take care of that, he said with a firm tone, holding a device that he created with Ajuka for this occasion. Greg. "Stop talking Azazel and do what you want," he said in a somewhat serious tone, to which Issei looks at his left hand. Issei. "So you will also turn your back on me, Drake," he said with a weak and painful tone, looking at the boosted gear with hatred and contempt. "Drake. Of course I'm turning my back on you. Do you really think I'm going to forgive everything?" That he didn't finish speaking because Issei interrupted him. Issei. "Shut your mouth, you imbecile dragon. The last thing I want is to hear your complaints. But you can rest assured that you will not be able to find a carrier who will treat you the way I have. Since anyone who has you will only treat you as a weapon," he said with a serious and somewhat weak tone, infuriating the Welsh dragon too much. "Drake. Don't believe such a big deal, idiot. You'll only be a small ant compared to the dragon that Kisuk will be in the future. He will be my best carrier, and he will treat me much better than you have done. He will make the name of the Red Emperor Dragon great," he exclaimed furiously and firmly, but Issei ignored everything the dragon said. Although Azazel for his part wasted no time and approached Issei to just place that device on him, which began to extract the boosted gear that was in the chestnut. A few moments later, the former leader of the Fallen successfully managed to remove the boosted gear from Issei. "Azazel. Don't be afraid, Issei. Ajuka and I have designed this device not only to remove your boosted gear, but also to keep you alive without it," he said in a mocking tone, but Issei spat at Azazel, who didn't think about it and began to kick the brown-haired boy hard. "Searches. Calm down, Azazel. Riaz, it's your turn," he said in a somewhat serious tone, while Azazel calmed down and went to where Kisuk was, and Riaz went to where Issei was. Iridi didn't think twice and created a magic circle under the brown-haired boy, completely confusing him, but as the seconds passed Issei felt like something inside him wanted to get out, causing him all kinds of pain. Until from one moment to the next, 8 objects came out of his body and into Riaz's hands, being nothing more than the pawn pieces which were all mutated. Riaz. "Oh wow, I didn't think they would all be mutated. You have certainly been useful to me, Ice," she said in a mocking tone, looking with contempt at Issei, who was lying on the ground. Unable to hold on any longer, Issei began to lose consciousness due to the pain and great blood loss he was going through, but the last thing the brown-haired boy could see was Riaz kissing Kisuk, who had the boosted gear on his left arm. Change of scene. We can see how Issei was waking up in a somewhat strange place. When the brown-haired man fully regained consciousness, he saw that he was in what appeared to be a cell. The entire place was made of concrete, there was great humidity, along with an incredible amount of mold on the ceiling and walls. Issei even came to smell a putrid smell, which caused him to be about to vomit. Getting up from the ground, the brunette saw how long chains attached to the walls were held on his wrists, thanks to shackles. Wanting to know where he was, for the next 2 hours Issei was trying to free himself and trying to call someone to free him, but nothing, no one came to the brunette's screams. Already tired of screaming, Issei sat on the ground leaning against the wall, repeating himself over and over again trying to find an answer or reason as to why he was locked in there until he remembered what happened at the occult club. However, the metal door in front of him opened, revealing a tall thin man with dark purple hair and having the same color in his eyes, wearing a black guard uniform and a hat with silver trim. "Aki. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Issei. I am Aki Myojin, and I need you to follow me," he said in a somewhat serious tone, while some guards entered the cell and freed the brunette. "Issei. What is this place and why am I here?" he said asked in a somewhat serious tone, leaving his cell and being forced to walk by the guards holding him. "Aki. Well, Mr. Issei, you are here for betraying the allied factions," he said in a somewhat serious tone, causing the brown-haired boy to be stunned to hear that. "Issei. I betrayed the factions," he said in an incredulous tone, not believing what Aki told him. "Aki. That's what the leaders told me. They will be in charge of getting information to find out if that's true. Well, I will try to take away what you know," he said with a serious tone, continuing on his way completely ignoring what Issei was saying. The brown-haired boy, for his part, tried to tell the guards that it was all a farce and to free him, but everything he said was ignored. After a short time, the 4 of them arrived at what seemed to be a kind of dining room, in which there were a huge number of people of different races. "Aki. Well, Mr. Issei, this is where the excursion ends. I hope you enjoy your stay in Tartarus," he said, leaving the dining room with the guards, leaving the brunette alone and closing the door of the place. Issei. "Wait, you can't do this to me. I'm innocent." The first swear, "I'm innocent, please get me out of here," he exclaimed trying to open the door of the dining room, but he couldn't do it. Meanwhile the criminals who were having dinner got up from their seats and headed towards Issei. "Issei. Damn," he exclaimed angrily, noticing how someone approached him until they were behind him. "Hey kid, what did you mean when you said you were innocent?" he said asked in a serious tone, causing Issei to turn to look at him. This is the creature that Issei is talking to. "Issei. I said it because I didn't do anything wrong, I'm really innocent," he said in a serious and firm tone, managing to make the creature in front of him laugh out loud. Yes, and I didn't kill more than 9,000 supernatural beings and humans, he said with a mocking and sarcastic tone, while Issei became serious upon hearing what he said. Listen carefully, kid, here it doesn't matter if you're innocent or not. The guards won't pay attention to you and will only see you as one of us, meaning just another criminal. And since you're new, we'll welcome you, he said, hitting Issei in the stomach, causing him to spit saliva and kneel. Seriously, you are very fragile, child, what have you done to earn an entrance to Tartarus? He said, asked in a mocking tone. However, Issei swept the creature's feet and then quickly got up and put his foot on its face. Issei. I did this, he said in a somewhat pained tone, since the blow hurt him a lot. Well, very good indeed. But you'll need much more than that, he said in a somewhat amused tone, pointing upwards, causing Issei to look ahead of him as the other creatures approached him. He was no longer able to use the boosted gear since it was taken from him, and as if that weren't enough, he didn't have the strength or endurance he used to have. He was alone in Tartarus. However, if he wanted to survive in Tartarus, he had to adapt to it. If he wanted answers about his betrayal towards the factions, he needed to be alive to get them. In that dining room there was a complete massacre, since somehow or another Issei managed to fight all the prisoners who were there, although the brown-haired boy was lucky enough to last only about 10 minutes in there. But when lunchtime ended, all the prisoners including Issei were sent to their respective cells, although Issei had to be taken to his cell because he fell unconscious in the middle of their fight. When Issei woke up the next day in his cell, he set himself the goal of surviving and becoming as strong as he could in Tartarus. Over the next few days, weeks, and even months, Issei was adapting to Tartarus, enduring and overcoming each torture, both physical and mental, giving his best to not break at any time. However, there were tortures that were close to driving the brunette crazy if it weren't for his goal of surviving, although in part due to having to deal with the prisoners of Tartarus, with whom he had fight after fight, to the point of going to the extreme. He even took advantage of the opportunity to make the guards believe that he was unconscious so that they wouldn't chain him up in his cell, and even when they chained him up he continued training, even with his wounds, to the point of spitting blood or feeling his bones creak as if they were about to break. Thanks to all of that, he was able to stay sane after each torture he received. However, Issei's sanity and mentality were about to break the day he received a personal visit from Searches who didn't say anything and only left him a kind of disc from which a huge screen came out. On the other side of the screen, all his fiancées were in very erotic and revealing outfits, each and every one of them being with a naked Kisuke in bed. The 4 hours that the recording seemed to last was like a complete eternity for Issei. In those 4 hours the brown-haired boy was able to see how all the girls who confessed their love to him, that they were going to get married and spend the rest of their lives together. They ended up leaving and sleeping with another guy, but not only him, but even his best friends and his own father were involved in that orgy. But that didn't stop there. Every weekend, more specifically on Sundays, he received that type of recordings, being the same as always, seeing how his ex-fiancées had sex with Kisuke and other guys like wild rabbits. Until he received a different recording than usual. That recording was nothing more than a wedding, being that of his ex-partners with Kisuke, seeing how each one accepted of their own free will, showing it in their faces and tone of voice. That undoubtedly affected Issei too much, destroying him emotionally and psychologically, making him think he was in a nightmare, but after a few seconds he realized that he was not in a nightmare, but that he was in reality, a hellish reality. However, an enormous feeling full of hatred, resentment and anger arose from Issei, which replaced all the psychological, physical and emotional damage he received for a long time. Having another goal besides surviving Tartarus, that goal was nothing more than get revenge on those sons of bitches. Present. After a whole year of being tortured, beaten and eaten in every way, we can see a dying and dirty Issei, with hair reaching or passing his shoulders and a huge beard, being dragged by some guards. These guards continued to drag the brown-haired boy until they reached what appeared to be a courtroom filled with people of different races. But among all those people, there were Issei's exes along with Kisuke and his parents, including the Citri entourage and Vali's team. Meanwhile, at a gigantic table were the leaders of allied factions, each one having a serious expression and looking with displeasure at Issei. And speaking of the chestnut, he was dragged by the guards until he reached the middle of the court, being forced to kneel in front of everyone present, receiving a great number of insults. Searches. Order in the courtroom please, he said calmly, raising his hand, causing everyone in the court to calm down and silence to reign over the place. Searches. Okay, coughing. The trial of the 5 factions against the ex-Ryuite Issei enters into session, he said in a serious tone, then got up from his chair with a scroll in his hand. Searches. The crimes that the ex-Ryuite is accused of are treason towards the allied factions, concealment and destruction of very valuable information about Kulipith, as well as his association with Rissavam Live and Lucifer, and the murder of people who discovered his secret, he said in a serious tone, making several holograms appear. in which everyone could see how Issei was somewhere in the world burning the files that Ajuka and Shembazai gave him, being seen by everyone present. After that, searches changed from hologram to a recording of Issei in his room, in his parents' house. In the recording. Issei. That's right, Rissavam-sama, I deleted all the files that the leaders obtained and also changed the location of the Amazon Jungle Archive vault. Nothing and no one knows what I've done, I even have the perfect excuse to convince Ajuka and Shembazai about the files they gave me, he said in a respectful tone, speaking to Lucifer's firstborn through a magic circle of communication. Rissavam. Well done kid, but you made sure no one saw you, right? He said asked in a somewhat serious and threatening tone, on the other side of the communication. Issei. About that, I had some unwanted guests, although one of them had been following me for a while. But don't worry, I took care of hiding their bodies well and also hiding my tracks, and I also checked that no one follows me. I don't plan on going through this again, he said in a confident tone, making Lucifer happy. Rissavam. Alright, just keep being patient. Soon my reign will begin and you, my little partner, will be well rewarded for that, he said with a happy tone, for not only having the factions in the palm of his hands, but also for having the Circuite in them. Issei. That doesn't matter, I have to cut it, the annoying hitches have already arrived, he said with a tone full of annoyance, listening to Riaz and the others arrive at the house going to their room. Issei cut off communication with the old man, then turned around seeing how the door to his room suddenly opened, having been laughed at along with the girls in his entourage who jumped on top of Issei who only formed a fake smile. End of recording. All the people seeing that could not insult the brown-haired boy again, while Riaz and her entourage were very enraged with Issei calling them. Although two children upon seeing the recording, doubted greatly that it was the real Issei, while the aforementioned only looked at the ground without even caring about anything. But that already shown, searches made the recording disappear and then showed the completely burned bodies of 3 people, being the supposed people who discovered the secret that Issei was working for Rissavam. Azazel. Unfortunately we have not been able to discover the entities of these people, but what we have discovered is that all of them died from being in contact with an incredible amount of heat. And thanks to the help of Kisuk, the current Circuite, we discovered that the cause of their deaths was due to a powerful dragon shot that only Issei could do with the help of the boosted gear, he said, with a serious tone and being sure of his word. Michael. Do you have anything to say in your defense? Circuite, he said asked in a serious tone, looking at Issei who only raised his head, but because of his bangs, his eyes could not be seen, although he pulled his hair back revealing eyes full of hatred and thirst for revenge, implanting some fear in the leaders. Issei. I'm guilty, he said with a mocking smile and moving his head to the side, leaving those present completely stupefied. Issei. It's true I betrayed them, I destroyed the files that Ajuka and Shembazai gave me, I killed those people, and they want to know something, I don't care, and I would definitely do it again. And of course, I'm also linked to Kulipith and I work for Rissavam, he said with an amused tone, while his smile grew, infuriating everyone present. Issei. Please, do you really think I feel bad or guilty about what I've done? I'm going to be afraid of the punishment you'll give me, then do it, give me any punishment, I'll come back anyway, and when I do, I'll kill you all, did you hear me? He exclaimed in a firm and insane tone, earning more insults from all the people who were present. Issei only received insults and curses as if they were compliments, making most of the majority want to go towards him to hit him, but 2 children did not believe the brown-haired boy's words at all. However, Issei ended up receiving a strong slap that resonated throughout the place, causing the entire court to calm down and silence to reign again. Searches. So, since you're guilty, you won't mind if we send you to a special place, right? He said asked in a dark tone, having a huge malicious smile worthy of a demon, causing the brown-haired boy to laugh. Issei. I don't care where you send me Siskin, I will come back and kill you, I will kill everyone here, did you hear me? He exclaimed with a firm tone, willing to keep his word. Searches. Azazel, I charge you to send him to purgatory, he said in a serious tone, causing everyone but Issei to be surprised to hear that. Azazel. I will gladly do it, bring him, he said with an authoritative tone towards the guards, who only held the brown-haired boy and began to follow the former leader of the fallen. As they left the court, Issei was dragged by the guards being insulted and cursed by everyone, he didn't care about anything, he just kept a mocking and carefree smile. Although many told him you will die traitor, I would like to see how you writhe until you die in purgatory, among other things. Part of him was curious about what they were telling him, but on the other hand, he was sure and confident that he would survive in this purgatory and that he would escape to get revenge on everyone. When they finally left the court, Issei was taken to a room where Ajuka was. Who upon seeing Issei could not hold back and gave him a strong blow to the face, causing the aforementioned to spit out a little blood mixed with saliva, while Azazel and the guard said nothing, ignoring what had happened. Ajuka. Will they send him there? he said asked in a serious tone, to which Azazel nodded answering the Mayu's question. Azazel? That's right, go prepare a juka. Without wasting any time, both mad scientists took a deep sigh and then began to recite an incantation, doing so in front of the guards and Issei who remained expectant. After a few minutes, Azazel and Ajuka finished reciting that incantation, causing a portal to open in the middle of the room. Azazel. Throw him away right now, he said in an authoritative tone, making the guards grab Issei and take him towards the portal, and without hesitating for a single second the two guards threw the brunette towards the portal, as if he were garbage. Somewhere else. We found ourselves in a completely rocky place, rivers, waterfalls, almost the entire place was full of lava, but as if that were not enough, there was a highly toxic environment which no one, absolutely no one could breathe, in addition to a unique and unbearable cold that not even the coldest place in the entire world compares to that place. However, there were also several creatures of different shapes and heights, lurking around almost the entire place. But in the sky, a portal opened, and from it came nothing but Issei who was plummeting at high speed. When Issei reached solid ground, a horrible pain ran through his body, and his left arm hurt like crazy. And if that wasn't enough, the moment he took a breath he felt his nostrils and lungs flaring from the pain, forcing him to spit out a large amount of blood, while his skin was beginning to burn, causing him infernal pain, a pain that made the tortures of purgatory seem like needle pricks. However, his will as well as his desire for revenge made the brown-haired boy get up from the ground with difficulty and begin to walk, but while he walked aimlessly, Issei could swear as if he had walked for decades, even though he only walked for a few minutes. Issei kept walking until he gave up, he could no longer move between the toxic environment and the hellish cold, managing to do something that the Tartarus could not do, break and defeat Issei. The brunette could not feel any of his limbs, his lungs felt like they were going to explode, so he had no choice but to stay there waiting for death to claim him. And there Issei stayed, dead and kneeling as a sign that he lost to purgatory. However, a silhouette in the distance managed to see the brown-haired boy, and in the blink of an eye, he appeared near Issei and carried him, and began to walk in one direction. Somewhere else. Boy, hey boy, wake up, said a man of about 23 years old, with short spiky pale blue hair, his eyes are a scarlet red color, and on the left side of his neck, he has a large scar. This man was giving small blows to the cheek of an Issei, who was slowly beginning to wake up from the noise and the blows, until he suddenly woke up seeing that he was on what appeared to be a rocky outcrop, even the sofa he was sitting on was also made of rock. You finally wake up, I thought you were dead, he said in a somewhat serious tone, going to a part of the room, while Issei didn't know what to say or do. Issei. Who are you, where am I and what is this place? He said asked in a somewhat serious tone, but at the same time astonished, since the last thing he remembered was when he knelt somewhere where he was. But what's wrong with you and that coldness? Aren't you going to thank me for saving your ass? He said asked with a somewhat offended tone, making the brown-haired boy surprised by that. Issei. You saved me, but how? I remembered dying, and he remained silent because he didn't know what to say, but the man just handed him a huge piece of meat. I gave you a part of my immortality, he said, taking a seat in front of Issei, who upon hearing the last thing was incredulous. Issei. Are you serious? But why did you do it? He said asked with a somewhat confused tone, making the man sigh somewhat tired. If I'm serious, you're immortal now and I did it because I couldn't leave you alone. Well, actually I could, but I did it to find out if you would revive, he said in a somewhat carefree tone, while Issei didn't say anything to that. This is my house, but outside we find ourselves in purgatory. A dimensional space between the world of the living and the other world, he said in a somewhat serious tone, proceeding to take a huge bite of the piece of meat he had in his hand. Issei. In short, we are in limbo, he said in a somewhat serious tone, causing the man in front of him to nod unconcerned. Issei. Have you tried to get out of here? He said asked with a curious and serious tone, earning a seriously grimace. Do you think I would still be here if there was a way out? You're wrong if you think that, kid, he said in a serious and confident tone, while Issei found no flaws in his logic. But you don't just want to leave purgatory and have a good life when you get out. But you want something, to fulfill something, but what is that? He said asked in a somewhat serious tone, making Issei sharpen his gaze. So revenge, huh? Did your partner cheat on you with another guy or did someone turn their back on you? He said asked something curious, noticing how Issei's eyes only showed hatred and revenge. Issei both. Wow, you must have had a really bad day for that to happen to you, he said, feeling some pity for the brown-haired boy. But is that serious? He said asked in a curious and doubtful way, while Issei shook his head. Issei. No, because of them I spent an entire year enduring hell, and it is because of them that I am here, he said in a tone full of hate, willing to fulfill his goal of taking revenge on the allied factions. It's okay, if you want to get revenge on them so much. Take everything you need, he said, extending his arms as a sign that he could grab the things from his house to leave purgatory. I don't plan on stopping you, you must be about 18, 19 years old, so you can do whatever you want. But I assure you that you won't survive out there, the cold can burn you to ashes, the toxic air here will only make you vomit blood, and you will feel like your lungs will hurt like hell while they swell. You can even rot dying from various different deadly poisons, he said seriously. Well, he continued eating and Issei ignored him, but in reality he paid full attention to what he was saying. And if you get to adapt to the environment of purgatory, you do not have the ability to face the creatures that live here, and you will only end up becoming their dinner, either by the souls that fell here and transformed, or by the native species that were born and live here. In addition, you can also become a creature condemned to wander in purgatory for all eternity, even one day we will cross paths, and there is a high probability that I will have to kill you, he said in a serious tone without looking at Issei, who did not say anything. As I said before, I don't plan on stopping you, much less getting into your business, but really. Don't you have something or someone much more important than that revenge? He said, asked in a somewhat serious and curious tone, while Issei remained silent until the memory of two children made his eyes widen in surprise. Issei. Kunu, Milikas, he whispered, being noticed by the man, who didn't say anything. I'll take that as a yes, he said while moving his eyes, having finished eating his piece of meat. Let me tell you something, kid, I'm not a philosopher or one of those people who give advice to motivate people. But I understand that revenge is never good, it kills the soul and poisons it, he said in a somewhat carefree tone, since he couldn't think of any other phrase. Issei. My soul is dead enough to be poisoned, he said in a confident tone, looking piercingly at the man, causing him to sigh. Well, I did my best to change your mind, do what you want, he said, getting up from the rock sofa, going to grab another piece of meat. Issei just left the meat on the couch and got up. He alone chose to leave Ban's house to search or discover how to get out of purgatory, although some voices caught his attention, causing him to turn around, but he didn't see anyone else but the man who saved him. Dusan-ai-san. The voice of Kunu and Milikas called him, but he didn't see them anywhere until he realized it was just his imagination. The brunette was about to open the door and leave, but he stopped and walked slowly towards where the man was. Issei. Do you think I can be saved? He said, asked in a somewhat serious tone, looking at the man who turned to look at him. In my opinion you have it, but you will end up losing it if you hold on too much to hatred and revenge. You will only make the people closest to you move away, and perhaps they will become afraid of you, he said, taking a bite of the meat he had in his hands. But you can prevent that from happening if you overcome your hatred as well as your revenge. I'm not saying that you forgive them or anything like that. You must put yourself on top and be much better than them without having the need to dirty your hands more than they already are. Break every relationship you've ever had with them, get away from them and live with those people you care about, she said, making Issei question whether to really get revenge or not, although he knew that was not going to be enough to undo his desire for revenge. Issei. But my hatred and anger as well as my desire for revenge will not disappear overnight, you know that, right? He said, asked in a somewhat serious tone, making the man nod. I know, that's why I think I'll help you with that. Although I don't have anything important to do, this place gets very boring sometimes, especially if you're alone, he said in a confident tone, while Issei formed a small smile and took a seat. Issei. Nice to meet you, my name is Issei, he said, extending his hand towards the man, which he shook. Ban. Mine is Ban, and you better prepare yourself, kid, because starting tomorrow you will be subjected to training, tests and challenges that you have never experienced in your life until now, he said confidently, making Issei take that as a challenge. Issei. We'll see about that, he said with a somewhat determined and defiant tone, causing Ban to form a small smile. I'm Skip. It has been 5 years since Issei arrived in purgatory, or from the brown-haired boy's point of view, several thousand years ago, and perhaps even much more than that, having a completely different age than what his body shows, although this is due to the immortality that Ban had transferred to him through a technique of his called gift. Although both Issei and Ban aged at a super slow rate, it was something that both completely ignored and focused on their activities. Being nothing more than the training that Ban was giving Issei, but before starting there, the brown-haired boy had to adapt to the environment of purgatory through tests, challenges and exercises. Something he managed to do after having died thousands and thousands of times and in different ways. After that, Ban proceeded to teach Issei the art of hand-to-hand combat and the use of nunchaku, showing him different types of stances and ways to use them in a battle. However, these two not only spent their time training, but also doing trivial things, such as learning to cook, talking about men and sometimes personal things. Although Issei was the most open because he felt enormous gratitude and even appreciation towards the bandit, but he also came to see him as a father figure, something that Goro never, or at least that's what he remembers that he came to show. However, once Ban opened up to Issei and told him some fragments of his past, or at least the memories that help him stay sane in purgatory, one of them being his childhood, although they were only blurry and short memories, but the ones he remembered the most were the day he met the love of his life and became immortal, as well as having joined a group called the Seven Deadly Sins. Issei couldn't help but feel pity and sadness towards his teacher, having noticed a melancholic, sad and nostalgic tone. But Ban couldn't help but deny that being accompanied was entertaining, since he had fun having one or another competition with the brown-haired boy or fighting each other, which for both of them must have been a total hell in purgatory. Ended up being practically an amusement park for both half-immortals. Present. In the present, we can see how Ban was around 43 years old, while Issei was 24 years old. The two were on top of the pig hut looking at purgatory, watching the creatures go from one place to another, some fighting each other while others fled, but the silence between them was broken by Ban. Ban. "Hey Issei, if you were to get out of this place, what's the first thing you would do?" he said, looking at the brown-haired boy. Issei. "Well, to start I would take a shower for at least 2 hours, wear comfortable clothes, eat a decent meal and drink a big vase of water, and to finish sleep in a big good bed," he said with a small dreamy smile, lying down on the floor. "And for 2, although instead of a vase of water I would prefer a vase of the best beer," he also said with a dreamy smile, being somewhat curious about what the human world was like currently. Issei. "And maybe make a new life, far from the supernatural, and the city where I was born and raised, spend it together with those two," he said, noticing a small rock near him, to which he grabbed it and threw it in an unknown direction. "And they were called Milikas and Kunu, right?" he said, looking at Issei, who just nodded. Issei. "Exactly, but the only thing I hope is that they believe in my words, and I can be with them again," he said, having some hope that those two children did not believe the story that he betrayed the factions, despite the fact that he shouted it from the rooftops in court. Issei. "And what would you do apart from what you said, sensei?" he said, somewhat curiously, looking at Ban, who only turned his gaze towards purgatory. "Ban. To be honest, I would like to see Elaine again and spend time with her, that's what I would like to do apart from what I said," he said with a melancholic tone, making Issei feel bad. Issei. "Sensei, I didn't want," he didn't finish speaking as he was interrupted by Ban. "Ban. That doesn't matter, what's done is done, she's in a better place, and I'll stay here until I lose my memory and become those things, I couldn't care less about that, Issei," he said in a somewhat serious tone, until Issei realized something. Issei. "You haven't noticed, have you?" he said, somewhat surprised and getting up from the ground, to Ban's confusion. "Ban. What do you mean by that?" he said, with a confused tone, looking at the brown-haired boy. Issei. "When I arrived at purgatory, it seemed to me that I had the appearance and age of a 19-year-old boy, but now I have the appearance of a 24-year-old man," he said, pointing to himself, something that Ban noticed and stood up. "Ban. Then, if you aged, so did I, but if I give you my remaining immortality, he didn't finish speaking as Issei interrupted him. Issei. "You will grow old and die, and that way you will leave purgatory, and maybe, just maybe, you can meet your beloved again," he said with a somewhat confident tone, although inside he was sad since he did not want to see his father figure die. Issei. "It's your decision, sensei, do you want to leave purgatory?" he said, in a somewhat calm tone, looking at his teacher. "And let's do it, but wait a second first," he said in a somewhat hurried tone, entering the cabin, confusing the brown-haired boy, but moments later Ban had returned, but having something inside his backpack which he always used when exploring purgatory. "Ban. I entrust you with my sacred treasure, Karakhouse, I know you will use it properly," he said, trusting in Issei, handing his backpack to the brown-haired boy, who surprisedly grabbed it. "Ban. Okay, are you ready?" he said, pointing his hand towards Issei, who just took a deep sigh. Issei. "Do it," he said in a firm tone, to which Ban did not think twice and used his gift technique, giving all his immortality to Issei. "Ban. How do you feel?" he said, curiously, looking at the brunette who only looked at himself. Issei. "I'm fine, but what about?" He didn't finish speaking because when he saw Ban, he could see how he was aging at a very fast rate, so Issei hurried to prevent the bandit from falling. Issei. Sensei, it worked," he said with a sad smile, proceeding to lay a 55-year-old Ban on the ground. "Ban. I know, but before I leave also I want to give you this," he said, holding a small pink orb in his right hand which he put in the brown-haired boy's chest. "Ban. It's my snatch magic, it makes an incredible combination with Karakhouse," he said weakly, a Ban who was already 60 years old, however Issei couldn't help but hold back his tears. "Ban. Why are you crying, idiot?" he said, in an even weaker tone than the previous one. Issei. I thank you very much sensei, for having trained me, for having helped me in everything, but above all I thank you for being like a father to me, he said with a grateful but sad tone at the same time, surprising Ban, who couldn't help but shed a small treacherous tear. And a nothing son, he said with the strength he had left, dying in Issei's arms. Ban's body was already that of a man of more than 90 years. Issei tried to stop crying, but he couldn't do it. He couldn't help crying for having lost someone who took much love and appreciation to him. But after several minutes, Issei stopped crying and carried Ban in his arms, ready to give him a proper funeral. That took him a few minutes since he had everything he needed to do it at home. By the time he finished making the preparations, Issei prepared to burn Ban's body. After a few hours later, Ban's body turned to ashes which Issei kept in a small bag. Issei. I hope you find peace, sin of greed Ban, he said with a tone full of respect, kneeling and then standing up. Issei just proceeded to leave, having stored Ban's ashes in the backpack he was carrying. Having done that, Issei began to walk until he was several meters away from where he burned Ban's body. However, listen to me Issei, since I don't think I'll repeat it again, if one day you get to leave this place, you better not give up on anyone, live your life your way, fall in love with whoever you think is right, and lastly, don't be an idiot and let yourself be controlled by your hatred or revenge. Is that clear? He said in a serious and severe tone, making Issei smile. Issei. Count on it, he said with a firm tone and a smile, while behind him a cloud of smoke dissolved, something that he noticed but still continued on his way. He had no idea what he was going to do now, if he was going to get out of purgatory or not, but he was sure, or at least he would try to keep his emotions as well as his feelings under control, that he would do everything possible to not disappoint his friend, his teacher and of course, his father. Chapter 1. The Idiot's Repentance. Author's POV plus current events. We find ourselves in the underworld. 5 years had passed since Issei had been sent to purgatory. During these years the allied factions went from being good to ending up being terribly bad. Risivum Live and Lucifer, who was believed to be dead, returned and more recharged than ever since he returned. He has been in charge of not only attacking and ruining the lives of the allied factions, but he also took charge of denying that Haidu Issei was his ally, and in exchange, he left the leaders as liars and idiots. Of course there were several reactions, including surprise and regret on the part of every demon, angel, fallen, etc. Although certain children who are now teenagers were happy to learn that everything that was said about Issei betraying the factions and being an ally of Risivum was false. But the only thing that changed was that everyone believed that the chestnut was dead in purgatory. That clearly made everyone's regret increase greatly, but as if that were not enough. The current Circur Uite and pawn of Riaz began to behave like a huge arrogant idiot when he lost alongside Vali in a fight against Risivum. From that day Kisuk showed an arrogant and superior side, making everyone be at his feet, although the leaders could barely control him. But leaving that aside, right now we are in the castle in the middle of a meeting between the leaders of the allied factions and the gods of the Greek pantheon. However, all the girls who were married to Kisuk had a lost and dull look, something that worried the men in their entourages, except for Kisuk who was not present. Searches. Do you have any information about Risivum? He said, asked seriously, looking at his comrades of different races. Azazel. We have nothing. Searches. Risivum is like a ghost, there is no kind of trace or anything we can use to locate him, he said seriously, clenching his fists tightly. Auden. What do you think we should do? He said, asked. Isaka. I would like to collaborate on this, but I have to go back to Kyoto. I have to help strengthen the barriers in case I receive another Culipath attack, she said somewhat seriously and getting up from her chair. Hades. Or you just want to get out of here so you don't have to take part of the responsibility, he said with some mockery, looking at the leader of the Yaques. Hades' appearance is that of a tall skeleton dressed in attire worn by high priests, as well as emitting an eerie aura, but despite having no eyes, his sockets can glow to give the appearance of eyes. Hades' appearance. Isaka. What do you mean by that? Hades don't know. He said, asked, looking at the Lord of Darkness. Hades. Well, why don't we start from the beginning, the betrayal that you did to Haidu Issei, he said seriously, while the girls, upon hearing that, had raised their eyes. Hades. You idiots were tricked by someone you barely knew and gave you false proof that she was with that idiot Risivum, and now you have all those girls as your hex slaves, including you, he said seriously, looking at the girls who slept with Kisuk and then looking at Yusaka, who just remained silent. Hades. But as if that were not enough, Haidu Issei broke every damn bone to protect them, to keep them all safe from everyone, and how do you repay him? Believing the stupidity that he was betraying you, and then sending him to Tartarus and Purgatory, he said, but this time with a cold tone, making everyone feel bad for what the god of the underworld of the Greek pantheon told them. Hades. But instead of trying to investigate and believe in the boy, no, you ended up trusting an idiot who only used you for his own benefit, and now, we find the beautiful scene that he is not present because, well of course, because none of you have the damn courage to get rid of him or try to kill him, he said seriously. However, Zeus had raised his hand. Zeus. Brother, that's enough, he said, trying to control his older brother, because his power was slowly increasing. Zeus is a handsome man with blonde hair and bronze eyes. His clothing consists of a red and white tunic with gold details, although his clothing only serves as another way to demonstrate his immense wealth and power. Appearance of Zeus. Hades. Anyway, I already said everything I had to say, he said something serious. Well, Zeus was going to say something but didn't say it. Rah. Well, since your matters against Rissivum Live and Lucifer and that Culipith organization are of no importance to us, we are leaving, he said as he left a magic circle accompanied by Horus and Anubis. Ra's appearance. Horus appearance. Anubis appearance. Searches. How could all this happen? He said, asked in a whisper while rubbing his forehead. 3 years ago. We met at another meeting, but at this meeting the allied factions were trying to make an alliance with the gods of the Greek and Egyptian pantheon, along with the god of destruction Shiva from the Hindu pantheon. Although the leaders of these 3 pantheons were hesitant to sign the alliance because they expected the Circuite Hayadu Issei to be present, however the gods knew nothing about Issei being sent to purgatory. But out of nowhere, an explosion had occurred above those present who used magic circles of protection to cover themselves from the rubble. When they dropped the rubble, everyone looked up, but the leaders along with the Gremory, Citri and Vali's team, saw Rissivum Live and Lucifer alive. Rissivum. Hello leaders, did you miss me? He said, asked with a huge arrogant smile. Searches. Rissivum, how are you still alive? I exclaimed, asked with anger and hatred, seeing the descendant of the original Lucifer. Rissivum. Do you really think that beings as weak as you can defeat me? You are just simple ants before me, he said with an arrogant smile, causing Searches to get even angrier. Azazel. Vali, Kisuk can take care of him, he said seriously, looking at the 2 celestial dragon bears. Kisuk. This will be a piece of cake, he said, arrogantly activating the balance breaker of the boosted gear just like Vali. Both celestial dragon bearers launched themselves at Rissivum. He didn't bother to move from his spot. By the time they were in front of Rissivum they tried to hit him, while Drake said boost and Albion divide. However, Rissivum easily dodged the blows from his grandson and Kisuk, but to Vali's surprise, Albion's ability did not work on his grandfather, but because of that he did not see a blow coming that he received courtesy of Rissivum that sent him very far away, but the old man had quickly created several magic circles from which different spells came out in the direction where Vali was. That caused several explosions, but out of nowhere Kisuk appeared behind Rissivum with a dragon shot and then launched it towards the old man. However, the descendant of Lucifer at an incredible speed was already in front of Kisuk to begin hitting him brutally to the point that he destroyed the balance breaker armor and crashed Kisuk into the ground, causing a loud bang. Rissivum. That's all they can do, I'm completely disappointed, he said with disappointment but still retaining his arrogance. Riaz along with the girls in her entourage ran worriedly to the place where Kisuk was. Once they arrived, Asia did not hesitate for a second and began to heal the black-haired man, however he pushed her roughly. Kisuk. Get away from me, he whispered with annoyance, something that everyone heard but Akeno says. Akeno. But Kisuk-kun, are you? I don't finish speaking as I end up receiving a slap courtesy of Kisuk. Kisuk. I told you to get away from me, he exclaimed angrily, something that took everyone by surprise. Riaz. Why do you say that? Are we worried about you? She said, asked sadly, watching the black-haired boy getting up. Kisuk. I don't give a shit about that, he said seriously as he stood up in pain. Riaz. Did you never love us? She said, asked with teary eyes. Kisuk. Love them? You must be kidding, seriously they believed it, he said with a mocking smile. Kisuk. I never loved you, I only pretended to love you so I could have sex with you and have the Red Emperor at my feet. You are undoubtedly very stupid, he said to the surprise of everyone present, while Kisuk had left in a magic circle. All the girls who had slept with Kisuk, the man they all loved and gave him their first time, ended up finding out that they were just simple hex toys for the black-haired man. However, Rissivum, who remained silent, began to laugh maniacally but happily, which of course angered the faction leaders, while the gods only remained expectant. Searches. What are you laughing at, bastard? I exclaimed, asked with anger and hatred, looking at the old man. Rissivum. That boy who is the Circuite abandoned them all without even hesitating. If it had been the former Circuite Hayadu Issei, we would already be fighting, he said with a big smile. But everyone except the gods remembered how that brown-eyed chestnut protected them no matter what. However, the girls could remember that radiant and kind smile of Issei, something that made them start to cry. Rissivum. I want to thank you all for sending Hayadu Issei to purgatory, he exclaimed with complete happiness, but the gods were surprised when they heard that. Brah. What do you mean by that? He said asked seriously, but inside he was surprised by what Rissavam said. Rissavam. I let slip what I said, but that doesn't matter. Issei had been sent to Tartarus and then to Purgatory, all because supposedly he was united to Kulipith and was an ally of mine. However, all that was false, he said in a carefree way to everyone's surprise, but more to the gods upon learning that the brown-haired boy was sent to the worst places that can exist in the supernatural world. Rissavam. To be honest, I would have liked to have him as an ally and possibly as a kind of left hand, but it's not going to be possible. However, I won the lottery when I found out that he was already dead, he said with some pity, but that changed to happiness at the end. Zeus. But what good is that? Exclaimed the father of Olympus very angrily. Rissavam. Even though it's hard for me to admit it, that brat was strong enough to be a damn thorn in my ass, he said in a somewhat serious tone, but that surprised the allied factions. Rissavam. Well, I would like to stay longer, but I have to go. Let's see if you survive this time without that brat, he said with a mocking smile as he left using a magic circle. The place fell into a completely sepulchral silence, however Shiva rose from his seat, followed by Zeus and Ra, who grabbed the alliance scrolls and then tore them up almost simultaneously, taking the allied faction leaders by surprise. Shiva Ra Zeus. We refuse to make an alliance with the allied factions, we will only make alliances with the gods of the other pantheons, and the former Circuyute, Issei Hayadu, they said in a somewhat coordinated manner. Shiva's appearance. Odin. But why Shiva don't know, Zeus don't know, Ra don't know? He said asked with surprise seeing the three aforementioned. Horus. We don't need to say why we reject your alliance, right? He said something serious. Poseidon. Do you really think that we would make an alliance with beings like you? No thanks, maybe you will end up believing a rumor that we are united with Kulipith, he said seriously but with some mockery, something that made the others feel bad. Poseidon's appearance, and if you don't like it, well, buck you. Shiva. From now on, do not believe that the gods will be on your side, he said seriously, creating a magic circle and leaving like the other gods. Back to the present. Zeus. I still don't understand why I agreed to meet with you. He said asked something serious since he practically didn't want to know anything about the allied factions. Michael. Hades don't know, can I ask you a question? He said asked looking at the Lord of Darkness who says. Hades. What do you want to ask, Dove? He said asked in a sharp and serious manner. Michael. Can you stand the atmosphere of purgatory? He said asked something that caught the attention of those present and ignoring what Hades called him. Hades. Of course I can stand it, after all the gods of death can be in that place, he said, remembering some things he did in that place with other gods of death from different pantheons. Azazel. So could you go to purgatory and try to save the boy? He said asked something that caught the girl's attention. Poseidon. How hypocritical they are, it was not enough for them to send him to Tartarus and Purgatory, now they want him back because the idiot current Circuyute no longer follows their orders, he said seriously, but with some mockery. Hades. Also, we don't know if he's alive or dead, even if he was alive, I highly doubt he'd want to go back to beings like you, he said seriously, which depressed the leaders, however. Rias. I beg you, Hades-sama, please find and rescue my ice from that place, I beg you, she said kneeling down, followed by the other girls. Hades. Listen to me everyone, he is no longer any of yours, and he stopped being any of yours the same day you turned your backs on him and left in the arms of another guy, so I suggest you don't say stupid things, he said seriously and saddening the girls a lot. Zeus. You could try, brother, at least to know if Issei is still alive in that place, he said with a somewhat calm tone, while Hades just sighed. Hades. Okay brother, I'll do everything in my power, he said with a surrendered tone, but still remaining serious. Searches. We wish you luck in your search, Hades don't know. With this I declare the meeting over, he said seriously, so that everyone could leave the castle through a magic circle. In the realm of the dead. We can see how the god of the underworld was walking towards his room, while behind him were his younger brothers. Poseidon. Are you sure you want to go to that place, brother? He said asked looking at the Lord of Darkness. Hades. I am, besides I have nothing to lose by going to look for the boy, he answered without stopping his walk. Hades. I want to ask you a question, Zeus, he said, looking sideways at his younger brother. Zeus. What is that question, brother? He said asked with curiosity just like Poseidon. Hades. Why did you want to make an alliance with those beings? He said asked referring to the allied factions as he stopped walking and looked at his brother. Zeus. At first I thought it would be good to have allies like them, but knowing what they did to Issei, I will not think of them as possible allies again, nor do I plan to cooperate in their own problems, he responded with total sincerity and firmness in his word. Hades. Okay, I'll let you know if I find him, he said as he continued on his way to his room. Both. Take care, brother, said the gods of lightning and the sea. Hades. Once he arrived at his room, without further ado he prepared everything necessary to go to purgatory. Once he had packed enough he began to recite the same spell that Ajuka and Azazel had done to send Issei to purgatory. When he finished reciting that spell, a portal appeared in front of him. Hades, without thinking for a single second, crossed that portal and moments later appeared in purgatory. The god of the underworld was looking at purgatory and only let out a brief sigh and said, "Hades. Okay, let's get to work," he said in a somewhat serious tone before starting to walk. Time skip. It had been about 2 months since Hades went to purgatory. His brothers did not receive any news about Hades, and much less his condition, while Hades had no idea how many days, months, years, decades, centuries or millennia he was in purgatory. All he did was walk aimlessly. Right now we see how Hades was already walking with his energies already reaching the ground. He was practically giving up because he couldn't find any kind of clue or something that could indicate that the brown-haired boy was still alive. However, out of nowhere some very large creatures appear surrounding Hades. The Lord of Darkness cursed himself for not having the necessary energy since he could not fight. But when he least expected it, all the creatures that surrounded him ended up turning to dust out of nowhere, something that took him by surprise, but he was taken out of his surprise by. "Heavens, it's been a while since we've seen each other," Hades don't know, said a voice behind the aforementioned, who only turned to see who the voice was from, only to be more surprised than before. In front of him was Issei, the ex-Recruiter and the one he lost against a long time ago, but now he was totally different from how he remembered him. The brown-haired man's appearance and the expression on his face was that of a man with all the word. There was no need to be smart. That changed due to his bad luck of going to Tartarus and then being sent to purgatory. "Issei. Is something wrong?" Hades don't know. "You seem surprised," he said, asked, approaching the god. "Hades. Are you really your boyfriend?" he said, asked, surprised seeing the brown-haired boy. "Issei. Yes." Hades don't know. "I'm Issei," he said with a small smile. "Hades. But how? Should you have died in this place?" he said, asked, because no one, absolutely no one except the gods of death, could adapt to purgatory. But in front of him was someone who breathed the toxic air as if it were fresh air, enduring the cold without even shivering a little. This made the god of the realm of the dead have a slight interest in how the brown-haired boy could have lived in purgatory. "Issei. You better follow me." Hades don't know. "A storm is approaching," he said, drawing the god's attention, making him look in the same direction as the brown-haired boy to see a toxic storm. "Hades. Do you know where we can stay?" he said, asked, looking at the brown-haired boy. "Issei. Sure, follow me," he said, starting to walk, being followed by Hades. They walked for several minutes and continued on their way until they reached a pig-shaped cabin. They both entered the cabin without further ado and then left their things on the stone chairs. "Issei. That was eternal," he said with a somewhat tired tone, sitting down like Hades. "Hades. You're absolutely right, however how can you still be alive?" he said, asked, looking at the brown-haired boy who just gave a small sigh and said. "Issei. Why do you say that?" he said, asked with some curiosity. "Hades. In the short time we've spent together, I'm sure it's been about 500 or maybe more years, but you haven't aged even a little bit and you're adapting too well to purgatory," Kitty said in a somewhat surprised tone. "Issei. Maybe it's because of my immortality," he said to Hades' great surprise, who didn't think about that. "Hades. What do you mean by immortality, boy?" he said, asked. However, Issei had cut off his right hand, which, seconds later, had regenerated out of nowhere. "Issei. This answers your question," he said, while Hades didn't know what to say until. "Hades. Although I am surprised by your ability to adapt to all this," he admitted with some surprise. "Issei. Well, that's what I have to do, adapt to this place. Besides, unlike you, I am made of flesh and blood. I have no choice but to get used to it," said the brown-haired man who had put several pieces of meat to cook. "Hades. I'm not saying it's strange that you get used to it, I'm saying that you should be able to adapt to purgatory," he said in a somewhat serious tone, remembering how his brothers couldn't be in purgatory due to their environment. "Issei. Oh yeah, well look at this," he said, approaching Hades and extending his right hand towards the Lord of Darkness. "Issei. If I tell you the truth, I have no idea if I got used to this place or not, but neither the burns nor the frostbite have had any effect on me for quite some time now, and my lungs that always used to be sore and swollen can now breathe as if there was fresh air in this place," he said somewhat seriously, as he remembered how he could barely stay outside the cabin. "Hades. Boy, you know what you're saying, you could be the only being apart from the gods of death who could have ever remained in purgatory for maybe, I don't know, millions of years, managing to survive and still clinging to your sanity now or never. Even with your immortality, it wouldn't be enough for you to endure all this," he said in a somewhat exalted tone. "Issei. It must be because of my stay in Tartarus, I had to endure different kinds of things," he said while looking at the meat. "Hades. I don't think they are the same things, he said with a somewhat mocking tone. Well, the brown-haired boy only got a little annoyed, but that annoyance ended up turning into seriousness. Issei. Why did you come to purgatory, Hades? Don't know. He said, answered seriously, to which Hades remembered his reason for being in purgatory. Hades. I came here to find out if you were alive. I was about to give up if it weren't for the fact that you defeated those things also. The bats, crows, doves and those who are allied with these want me to take you back, he said seriously, and referring to the 3 biblical factions, along with the factions that are allied with these. Issei. Why do you want me back? He said, asked seriously, remembering how the idiots, as he calls them, turned their backs on him because of extremely false evidence that only people with 3 brain cells would believe. Hades Risivum live and Lucifer is alive, and this time, he is taking advantage of the fact that you are dead to slowly destroy each faction except for the gods, although I wouldn't be surprised if he tried it once he completes his first objective. He responded seriously to what Issei had made a grimace full of displeasure. Issei. I don't give a shit what happens to those idiots, he declared seriously, not caring what happens to the factions that turned their backs on him. Issei. Although I wouldn't mind joining you if there is a place for you to accept a human as an ally, he said with a small smile looking at Hades. Hades. Zeus will agree to make an alliance with you, boy. After all, it was thanks to you that we became the brothers we once were in the Titanomichi, he said, remembering the moments his brothers had in the fight against their father Kronos and the other titans. Issei. By the way, if Risivum appeared, how did the celestial dragons lose to him? He said, asked since he wanted to know why Vali or Kisuk didn't kill Risivum. Hades. Both of them were very confident in their power, but the idiot they changed you for even more. The old man ended up spending the day with them. He responded somewhat seriously to what the brown-haired boy said. Issei. That doesn't surprise me, by the way. If you're here, surely you know how to get back, right? He said, asked. Hades. Of course, boy, he replied proudly, knowing that he had the only way out of purgatory. Issei. If that's the case, let's get out of this place, he said with a small smile, to which Hades says. Hades. Okay, he said, ready to recite the spell, but he is stopped by the brown-haired boy. Issei. First let's eat something. Even though I'm immortal I don't have the need to do this, but somehow eating makes me feel alive. I don't know if you want to eat, he said while eating a piece of cooked meat, but not before also passing a piece of meat to Hades. Hades. Sai, do what you want, boy. In the meantime I will contact Zeus or Poseidon, he said, creating a magic circle and trying to contact his brothers while Issei was eating. Later. Right now we see how Hades and Issei already had their things prepared and ready to leave purgatory. However, Hades noticed how the brown-haired boy was clenching his fists tightly as a sign that he still felt hatred towards the allied factions. Hades. Are you sure you want to come back, boy? I can keep saying that you're dead, but he didn't finish speaking because Issei interrupted him. Issei. I have to do it, even if I feel hatred and want to kill all of them. I'm going to face this. I don't like the idea of forgiving them, but if I want to be a better person and overcome them I'll do it, he said seriously, to which Hades was a little surprised by the maturity of the brown-haired boy, since in the place of the aforementioned, anyone would have gone down the path of revenge. Hades. You've changed a lot, boy. It's obvious that you've matured, he said with a small smile, although deep inside Hades, he would not hesitate to help the brown-haired boy in trying to extinguish the allied factions. Issei. Let's say someone helped me change, he said with melancholy as he remembered the words Ban told him a long time ago. Hades. Well, it's time to go, he said, reciting a different spell than the one he used to get to purgatory. Once he finished, a portal appeared in the middle of the room. Hades. Ready? He said, asked looking at the brown-haired boy, who gave a small smile. Issei. I'm always ready, he said something serious, and then they both entered the portal. Once they both crossed the portal, they had appeared in the middle of a room, although Issei found that room familiar, so he tried to remember everything he could until he realized where he was. He found himself in the occult club, a completely remodeled and new one from what he could remember, although in doing so, he only ended up remembering all the things that had happened in the club. Ice. Asked a voice of a woman behind the brown-haired boy, to which he just turned around seeing Arias of about 26 years old. But behind the redeed, there were what were once his girlfriends and his friends, but not only them, there were also Sona's entourage with her entourage, Vali's team with Office, the allied factions, and finally, a man of about 34 years old with Milikas and Kunu of about 15 or 16 years old. Issei. Sigh if you laugh, it's me, he answered seriously, but combined with hatred looking at everyone present. Chapter 2. Reunions. Authors Pav. There was a huge, awkward, deathly silence in the occult club. On one hand, the people who had turned their backs on Issei had a whirlwind of emotions inside them. Among them, the astonishment of seeing him alive, the regret of realizing his enormous mistake, and the hope of fixing things. However, Issei for his part couldn't help but feel enormous hatred and desire for revenge. But even so, the brown-haired boy tried to endure the hatred, resentment and thirst for revenge at that moment. However, the short and few memories of his betrayal made him stop containing everything that would be to kill all of them at that moment. He was even about to use Fox Hunt to finish them all off in one move. However, Issei stopped at the last moment, having remembered the different conversations he had with Ban, whether about revenge or how he could be better than the people in front of him. With much doubt and insecurity, the brown-haired boy turned his gaze to another side, very annoyed. But in doing so, his sight had focused on Kunu and Milika's, who were already teenagers. Teenage Kunu appearance. Teenage Milika's appearance. Well, behind both young men, there was a man of about 35 or more years old with red hair and a serious expression on his face. On the part of Kunu and Milika's, it was a lie that both young men were surprised to see the brown-haired boy again. But they weren't the only ones. Issei was surprised and happy to see them again. He even remembered the happy and fun moments he had with them when they were children. Without wasting any time, Issei headed towards where they were, but before he could take a single step, Issei grabbed Riaz by the neck, who had previously jumped in his direction. But just by glancing at the already adult Reed, he felt enormous hatred, causing him to apply a little force in his grip and having the thought of wanting to break Riaz's neck at that moment. "Riaz. Why are you doing this?" she said, asked with great difficulty, losing air as she was being choked by Issei. "Issei. And yet you ask, do you think I'll forget everything they did to me? What you and that group of hitches did to the guy you traded me for?" he said, asked seriously and very annoyed, wanting to kill her at that moment. "Riaz. It was a mistake. I'm so sorry. I'm serious," she said with great difficulty, about to lose unconsciousness, but Issei released her. Riaz for her part fell to the ground, starting to cough and recover the air she lost. Meanwhile, Issei did not feel bad or guilty about what he did. Just the opposite, he felt some satisfaction at having strangled the Reed. "Issei. From what I can see on your faces, you realized everything, right?" he said, asked seriously and noticing how everyone had an expression full of remorse. "Searches. Issei-kun." He didn't finish speaking because Issei interrupted him. "Issei. Save your words, Searches. I don't give a damn what you're going to say, and neither do the others as far as I'm concerned. You can all go to hell," he said seriously, silencing the Mayu and the others. Getting back to what he was going to do, Issei headed towards where Kunu and Milika's were. Standing in front of both teenagers, none of the three knew what to say. Kunu and Milika's looked at Issei, who kept a serious expression looking at both of them. But when they least expected it, Issei put his hands on the heads of both teenagers while a small loving smile formed on his face. "Issei. You two have grown a lot, you have definitely stopped being children," he said in a somewhat soft tone, remembering the good times he spent with both of them. But the brown-haired boy not only noticed that both young men grew physically, but he could also feel how the power of both grew enormously, and he could see the maturity marked both in their eyes and in their faces. Unable to bear it any longer, both young men had hugged Issei at the same time. Meanwhile, Issei had seen it coming, but that didn't stop him from being surprised by Kunu and Milika's action. "Kunu, Milika's. We miss you so much too, Sanai-sama," said both young men, but calling the brown-haired boy in different ways, hugging him very tightly. "Issei. I missed you both too," he said while reciprocating the hug of the Yakai and the demon. "Issei. We have a lot of things to talk about, but let's get out of here. What do you think?" he said, asked, breaking the hug and looking at the young people. "Kunu, Milika's. Sounds good to us too, Sanai-sama," they said in an animated manner and ready to leave with the brown-haired boy. "Issei. Are you coming with us?" "Hades," he said, asked, seeing the Lord of Darkness. "Hades. I would go anywhere just to not be here," he said in a serious tone, ready to also leave with the brown-haired boy. "Auden. Where are you going, boy?" he said, asked when he saw how the group was about to leave the club. "Issei. Is there a problem with that?" he said, asked, looking at the father of all, who felt the presence of the brown-haired boy much better. His expression changed to fear, all for the simple reason that he felt an incredible energy in the brown-haired boy that seemed to be infinite, without any limits. Everyone was surprised, but also surprised by how Auden stood still without saying anything, although Azazel decided to speak. "Azazel. Haven't you come back to help us in the war we have against Rissavam?" he said, asked, thinking that was the reason he had returned. Although, Issei looked at Hades, who did the same, and then they both started laughing like crazy. Issei was even crying with laughter at what the former leader of the Fallen said. After a few moments that Issei and Hades calmed down, the brunette coughed a little, but was still amused by what Azazel said. "Issei. You said it yourself, Azazel, it's their war, not mine," he said with a somewhat carefree tone and a small smile, having planned not to help the allied factions in any way. "Searches. But Issei-kun, we need your—" I didn't finish speaking, since Issei the moment he heard the kun. The smile on his face disappeared in an instant, and then he appeared in front of Searches, grabbing the Redeed by the face and quickly slamming him against the club wall with enormous force. Issei. Tell me, Searches, what you were going to tell me, was it a joke or were you going to be serious? He said, asked in a serious tone, while Searches tried to free himself from Issei's grip. But he couldn't do it. Issei's strength was completely monstrous, one that he couldn't compete with, so he chose to answer the brown-haired boy's question. Searches. I meant it, Issei-kun, we need your help, we really need it, he said with some difficulty, while Issei didn't say anything. Searches knew that Issei was too strong with the boosted gear, but when he noticed the monstrous change in the brown-haired boy, he thought he had hit the lottery, since he didn't want to imagine what power he would have with the boosted gear, but he was very sure that Issei would easily defeat Risivam and dismantle Kulipith once and for all and forever. However, the Redeed noticed how Issei was applying more and more force to the point that he felt like his head was about to explode. Searches, Issei-kun, stop, I beg you, my head. He didn't finish speaking, because due to the pain he felt, it was difficult for him to formulate the words. Issei. Listen to me well, Searches, you think that after having stained my name and image, having turned their backs on me despite everything I've done, having been framed as well as having an unfair trial. In addition to having been sent to Tartarus to be treated like the worst trash in the universe and then being sent to purgatory for a long time, do you still think that I'm going to help them as if I were a simple lapdog? You are completely wrong, he said, seriously releasing the Mau, who threw himself to the ground while feeling a terrible pain in his head. Those present did not know what to say or do regarding what Issei said, practically none of them had the courage to speak to the brown-haired boy. Milikas, for his part, did not care much about what happened to his father and, in fact, thought he deserved it. Issei. And I want you to listen to me too. As I said before, I don't give a damn who I'm fighting against, whether it's against Risivam, against the Trahixa or against any entity that wants the destruction of the allied factions. I won't even care if any of you live or die, is that clear? He said, asked seriously, looking at the others who were in the club. Issei. The affairs of the supernatural world, their affairs, they are no longer and will not be my problems again, he said seriously, ready to leave the club. Isaka. But we need you, Ice Dono, what do we have to do to get you back with us? With me? She said, asked in a somewhat pleading tone, while Issei exhaled air in an annoyed manner. Issei. You have to be kidding me, he said with a somewhat incredulous tone and a small amused smile, as he turned to look at the leaders. Issei. Please, do you ever stop to think about your titles as leaders? You five are war veterans with great experience regarding battles and strategy tactics. Surely each of you must have been in a war, and that is where you showed why you should have been chosen as faction leaders, or are your titles nothing more than simple ornaments? He said, asked seriously, while each leader remained silent. Issei. So why don't you go against Risivam and show him the power of the allied factions, instead of wasting your time here and also losing the little dignity you have left, he said seriously, turning his back on everyone, however. Riaz. I'm sorry, Ice, but I won't let you. I didn't finish speaking as the moment I got up. Issei, along with Hades as well as Milikas, Kunu and the red-haired man, had left the club in the blink of an eye. Somewhere else. We can see how Issei, along with Hades and the red-haired man, arrived at a part of Kuo. Meanwhile, Milikas and Kunu were being grabbed by Issei, as if they were 2 sacks of potatoes. Issei. I was already getting irritated by being in that place, he said with a somewhat serious tone as he carefully lowered Kunu and Milikas. Hades. You don't need to say it, I could tell that it didn't bring back good memories and that you wanted to kill them all. But I don't blame you, in your place I would do almost the same thing, but with the difference that I would kill them, he said in a sincere tone. Issei. Touché, he said somewhat carefree, turning his gaze towards the man. Issei. By the way, who are you? He said, asked with a strange tone, looking at the man. Great Red. I am Great Red, Larva. Have you forgotten who I was? Said, asked the dragon god of dreams, introducing himself. Issei. I haven't really forgotten you, it's just that it's the first time I've seen your human form, he said with a somewhat surprised tone to see Red in human form and not in his dragon form. Great Red. Come here and say hello to me, Larva, he said, extending his hand, to which Issei shook it, then slapped himself on the back with his free hands. Issei. Is it just me or have you become very sentimental? He said, asked with some mockery, receiving a slap in the face from the dragon. Great Red. Shut up, will you, he said seriously, while Kunu and Milikas smiled with amusement seeing what happened. Issei. Sigh, well, now the million-dollar question, where are we going to sleep today? He said, asked, noticing how it was nighttime and that he didn't have money to pay for a night in a hotel. Milikas. We know a place where we can go, Nai-sama, he said, drawing the brown-haired boy's attention. Issei. Oh yeah, where is it? He said, asked, curious and interested in knowing that place. Kunu. It is located in one of the dimensions of the dimensional gap. Red Oji-san can take us, he knows how to get there, she said with a small smile, while Issei was wondering many things. Issei. Your powers grew too much, a place in the dimensional gap. Red Oji-san, what happened in the time I was gone? He said, asked, surprised and wanting someone to answer that question. Hades. A lot of things have happened, boy, but it's best that you rest. I'll return to my kingdom and send some of my servants to make a house for you to live in. I'm sure it will be ready by tomorrow, he said, while shaking hands with the brown-haired boy as a sign of farewell. Issei. Okay, and thank you for getting me out of purgatory, he said, while giving the Greek god of the underworld a light punch on the back. Hades. You're welcome, boy, see you later, he said, walking away from the group and leaving the human world. Great Red. Well, let's get out of here, he said, something serious while creating a gap in the air. Issei. It's the best, I can feel the presence of all of them approaching, he also said in a somewhat serious way, as he felt the presences of those who turned their backs on him were approaching. Gunu and Milikas were the first to pass through the gap, after them came Issei and finally Red, who was in charge of closing the gap. A few moments later, the leaders of allied factions along with the Citri and Gremory entourages arrived at the place where Issei, Kunu, Milikas and Red were. But there was nothing and much less anyone there. In one dimension. We can see how Issei along with Red appeared in a beautiful snowy place. Issei for his part stayed looking at the place, enjoying the view that the dimension gave. Kunu. Tusan, over here, she exclaimed, drawing the brown-haired boy's attention. Issei looked in the direction where Kunu was, seeing a somewhat large cabin behind the blonde while Milikas was entering the cabin. The brown-haired boy didn't think twice and headed towards the cabin. After a few moments the four of them entered the cabin, Red being the last to enter. Issei. Well, at least it's not an exaggeratedly large mansion like the ones in the underworld or the Haidu mansion, he said, noticing how the cabin was big enough for 5 people. Milikas. Kunu-ni, and I thought it was unnecessary to do so, after all it's just her, Red Oji-san and me, he said while sitting on a sofa. Issei. That makes sense, although this place looks and is much better than the cabin here as I did in purgatory, he said sincerely, wanting to lie down on the double sofa there. Milikas. And speaking of purgatory, he didn't finish speaking because Kunu interrupted him. Kunu? How did you survive there? She said, asked, finishing what Milikas started. Issei for his part gave a sigh, and with a quick and clean movement, he cut his left hand, alarming both Kunu and Milikas as well as Red. Kunu. Milikas. Why did you do that? They exclaimed, asked, worried and alarmed by what the brown-haired boy did. Issei. Don't be alarmed, do you want? He said in a carefree manner, while showing his left hand which was back in its usual place, something that left the 3 present incredulous. Great Red Larva, did you? He didn't finish speaking because Issei interrupted him. Issei. Exactly, I am immortal, thanks to this I was able to adapt and survive in purgatory for a long time, he said as he sat on a sofa, being completely pleased to feel the comfort and softness of the furniture. Great Red. Sometimes I think that the human race is not as weak as they say, he said honestly, believing what the brown-haired boy said. Issei. Let's say we are boxes full of surprises, although I would like to do some tests to find out if I am human, he said, getting up from the sofa, willing to find out if he became human again. Great Red. Wait here, I'm going to get something, he said, leaving the living room and going to the kitchen. The 3 in the living room were a little surprised, although Issei was a little curious, so Red went to look in the kitchen. After a few moments, Red returned, but this time carrying a bottle of distilled golden apple liquor. Great Red. No dragon can help but be attracted to a good golden apple distillate, but let's see if you really are a larva dragon, he said, giving the bottle to Issei, who didn't think twice and opened it and then drank it. Issei. I'm being honest with you, Red, this is disgusting, he said in a somewhat serious tone, feeling a bad taste in his mouth and returning the bottle to the dream dragon. Great Red. Well, this proves that you are not a dragon. Well, do you want to try taking a bath with holy water? He said, asked while drinking some of his drink, while Issei shook his head as a sign that it was not such a bad idea. Kunu. Milikas. Of course you won't do that, Tusan Nai-sama, both young people exclaimed in a somewhat serious and worried manner. Issei. Why not? He said, asked, somewhat surprised, looking at the yokai and the demon, who looked away in embarrassment. Kunu. We're sorry, Tusan, it's just that she didn't finish speaking because Milikas interrupted her. Milikas. We still haven't gotten used to you being immortal, and we're worried that something bad might happen to you, he said, finishing what Kunu was going to say. Issei for his part smiled and walked towards both young men, putting his hands on their heads. Issei. You guys have nothing to worry about, I'll be fine from any wound, illness, and anything else. I may be immortal and some may think I have no weakness, but the truth is that you are my weakness. But I will still take care of protecting you, he said with complete confidence, in the last words he said. Kunu. Milikas. "You're very good too, Sandai-sama," both young people exclaimed, hugging the brunette crying on their chest. Issei. "Hey, you don't have to cry, okay?" he said, trying to lift the spirits of both young people who wouldn't let go of him. Issei. "Sigh, okay, keep crying, but I would like to ask you a question, aren't you hungry?" he said, and in an instant both young people said. Kunu Milikas. "Yes, we are very hungry too, Sandai-sama." Issei. "Okay, I'll see what's in the kitchen," he said, going straight to the kitchen, being followed by Kunu and Milikas. Once in the kitchen, Issei opened the refrigerator and found several pieces of chicken which he took out and then took some things from some shelves. Issei. "Yes, I think this will be more than enough for all of us," he said in a somewhat confident tone, to go wash his hands and put on an apron to start doing his magic in the kitchen. Later. After a delicious dinner, we can see how Issei was washing the dishes. Kunu and Milikas went to get ready to go to sleep, while Great Red was sitting on a chair using a toothpick to remove a small piece of chicken that got stuck between his teeth. Red. "Without a doubt, this is the most delicious food I've eaten in a long time. It seems you weren't lazy in purgatory," he said, managing to remove the piece of chicken he had in his teeth. Issei. "Let's say that I have learned many things both in purgatory and in Tartarus, although in part I must thank all of them for having sent me to those places. I have become much stronger than when I had Drag, in addition to knowing who I can trust and who I can't," he said something serious, admitting that part of his current physical abilities are thanks to those who sent him to Tartarus and purgatory. Great Red. "What are you going to do from now on?" Larva, he said, looking at the brown-haired boy who had already finished washing the dishes and turned off the tap. Issei. "Live a normal life, far from the supernatural and from Kuo. Although I don't know if Kunu or Milikas will come with me or what they will do, but I will ask them, and I think nothing more than just that," he said with a firm tone, wanting to leave the supernatural world and the city where he was born and raised, since it did not bring him good memories. Great Red. "You know you can count on my help for whatever you need, right?" Issei. "Yes, I know, and speaking of help, do you have some clothes to lend me?" "To be honest, I already want to take this off," he said while looking at his clothing, which was made with the skin of the creatures of purgatory. Great Red. "If you have it here, use whatever you want," he said, creating a magic circle on the table, bringing out many shirts, pants, jackets, etc. Issei. "Thank you," he said in a somewhat grateful tone, approaching the mountain of clothes and seeing what might fit him more or less in his size. Issei. "A question, Red, did you train Kunu and Milikas?" he said, curiously, and remembering how the power of both young men was almost reaching that of a supreme class demon. Great Red. "That's right, Larva. After you were sent to purgatory, those little larvae didn't want to know anything about their parents, not even see them in portraits. So I brought them to this dimension, and so as not to keep them locked up and bored, I chose to train them these years," he said as he remembered the training of Kunu and Milikas. Issei. "Well, let me tell you that you achieved great results," he said honestly, knowing that Kunu and Milikas were not weak. Great Red. "By the way, what do you have in there?" he said, curiously, pointing to a bag in which he felt a great energy. Issei. "It's a gift from the same person who gave me the immortality that I have," he said honestly, while Red said nothing. Issei. "Okay, I'm going to sleep, rest up," Red, he said as he came out of the kitchen, holding a pair of pants, a shirt and shoes in his arms. Great. You too, Larva. We see how Issei was going up the stairs of the cabin ready to use one of the rooms there. Without taking the time to look at the rooms, the brunette didn't hesitate twice and entered the room that was closest to him. Once inside, Issei didn't waste any time and headed to the bathroom in the room to take a shower. Issei just turned the knob of the hot water, feeling great satisfaction when he felt the water running through his hand. Without thinking twice, he took off the clothes he was wearing, however. When the brown-haired boy saw himself in the mirror, he noticed that his hair was a bit long. He saw that the mirror had a small handle, so he decided to open it. When he did this, he saw many bathroom items such as creams, deodorant, shampoo and conditioner, soap, dental floss, as well as toothpaste and a toothbrush that appeared to be new. But what caught Issei's attention was a silver pair of scissors which he grabbed and closed the mirror. After that, and without thinking twice, he began to cut his hair, letting several strands of hair fall either on the floor or in the bathroom sink. After a few moments, Issei opened the mirror to leave the scissors where they were and closed the mirror again, but in doing so, Issei's hair was shorter than before, having it combed upwards. Although of course, it had certain imperfections, but it was not something that mattered much to him. Issei. "Well, let's not say how gross, what a great haircut I got, but how it was before, it's better," he said, liking the haircut he got. After that, without hesitation, Issei got into the shower, but not before grabbing the shampoo and soap. Issei was showering for a long 45 minutes, enjoying the hot water. Once he finished showering, the brunette dried himself with a towel and got dressed. After that he proceeded to clean the bathroom, since he couldn't leave the strands of hair that were on the floor and in the sink. A few minutes later, Issei left the bathroom sparkling clean without any kind of dirt, so without wasting any more time, he proceeded to leave the bathroom and throw himself onto the bed. Enjoying the soft, cold and comfortable mattress, feeling like I was slowly coming back to life. Issei. Heavens, this is definitely much better than the bed of rocks. I'm sure Ban would have loved to sleep in a bed like this, he said with a tone full of satisfaction as he settled into bed, although upon saying the name of the sin of greed, his expression changed to one full of nostalgia. However, the sound of the door opening caught his attention, staring at who was entering, being Kunu and Milikas, both wearing pajamas. Issei. Is something wrong? Kunu, Milikas he said asked something curious and surprised seeing both teenagers. Kunu. See, can we sleep with you tonight? Tusan she said asked somewhat embarrassed by what she said, well Milikas was the same way, even though she didn't say anything. Issei. Okay, both of you come here he said, making some space for the two of them to enter. That certainly brought a bright smile to the yokai and the demon, but without wasting time they lay down on different sides of the chestnut tree. Milikas. By the way, Nai-sama, we brought this, you remember it, right? He said, giving some photos to the brown-haired boy, who looked at them carefully. In that photo there was the 17-year-old along with Kunu and Milikas between 11 and 12 years old, the three of them being inside a photo booth. Issei. Oh yeah, this was when we went to the amusement park in the underworld, Searches and Yusaka were busy with their things, so I offered to take them there. Yes, I remember that day well, he said with a small nostalgic smile looking at the photos, in which the three of them were making funny faces, in addition to having their faces painted. Kunu. By the way, Tusan, about what happened at your trial, were the things you said true? She said asked remembering the words the brown-haired boy said at the unfair and poorly done trial he had. Issei. Yes, they were, since back then I was blinded by hatred, resentment and revenge. But I will try to put that aside and get over it, although I am thinking of letting Risavam do whatever he wants with them, he said with a sincere tone, settling into bed, while both young men said nothing. Issei. Let's sleep, okay? Tomorrow we will have our own house in the human world, and I will also be in charge of getting them into the academy, you have the knowledge, right? He said asked, looking at both young people. Kunu Milikas. Of course, Tusan Nai-sama they exclaimed, remembering how hard they studied to get to this moment. The next day. We see how in the human world it was daytime, more specifically 11:10 in the morning. But we will focus on a part of the city of Kuo, in which we see how Milikas, Kunu, Issei and Great Red came out of a gap. The four of them appeared in front of a beautiful, somewhat large and luxurious house, something that none of those present were surprised to see. Hades. What do you think of your new house? Boy he said asked, drawing the attention of the brown-haired boy and his companions. The four of them turned around, but upon doing so, they saw that Hades was not alone, but was accompanied by his two younger brothers, and that Ra, Anubis and Horus were also with them. Issei. To be honest, she's very pretty, thank you Hades he said sincerely, looking at the other gods. Issei. Zeus, Poseidon, Ra, Horus, Anubis. How have you been? He said asked greeting the gods with a handshake. Zeus. We've been doing well, kid, although we didn't think you'd be with life, he said in a tone surprised to see the brown-haired boy safe and sound. Anubis. Hades told us about your current abilities, child, and let me tell you that I, along with my brothers, am surprised to learn that you adapted to purgatory, he said in a somewhat serious tone, recognizing the feat that the brown-haired boy achieved. Issei. Well, actually I wasn't the only one who managed to adapt to purgatory, there was another person who was in that place for a long time he said, while an image of Ban came to his head, who was actually the first human to have adapted to purgatory. Issei. True my manners, do you want to come in so we can chat a little? He said asked pointing to his house, well the gods didn't see anything wrong with that, so they accepted, but. Great Red. For my part no larva, I have to go do some things, but before I go have this he said, while throwing him a somewhat large bag, which Issei grabbed to open it seeing a huge variety of jewels. Great Red. This will help you and the little larvae to live well. Issei. Thank you Red and don't worry, I'll give you back every penny he said in a grateful tone towards the dream dragon. Great Red. No need, I have much more where that came from goodbye he said, leaving the place through a gap while the others said goodbye to the dragon. After that, Issei along with Kunu and Milikas entered the house being followed by the gods. Once inside, everyone took seats in the living room. Issei. Well, where do you want to start? He said asked something curious, wanting to know what the Greek or Egyptian gods were going to ask. Horus. What do you plan to do with the allied factions? He said asked something curious, which made the brown-haired man frown a little. Issei. Sigh regarding them. I will not do anything. I do not intend to move any muscle either for the leaders, who were supposedly my friends, or the women who claimed to love me. Let each one solve their problems by themselves. Besides, they have Vali and Sir Kyuute, so I am not worried that they could lose against Risivim, he said, with a tone disinterested in wanting to help the allied factions. Poseidon. Didn't Great Red or those kids tell you? He said, asked curiously and surprised, while Issei raised an eyebrow with a little curiosity and looked at the young people who were next to him. Issei. Do you know what he's talking about? Poseidon. Guys, he said, asked something curious looking at Kunu and Milikas. Brah. Boy, the allied factions are almost on the verge of being conquered by Risivim, Live and Lucifer and the Hakuryuku along with the Sir Kyuute. They can't avoid that, he said somewhat directly, which took Issei by surprise. Issei. Are you serious? Ra, he said, asked with a surprised tone, knowing that the factions are about to be conquered by his old enemy. Anubis. Ra is serious. Boy, the allied factions have tried to push back Risivim, but everything they did didn't work, plus it's as if the Sir Kyuute was collaborating with them, he said in a somewhat serious tone, knowing that Kisuk didn't move a muscle at the moment the factions were suffering a Kulipath attack. Horus Kulipath has managed to dismantle all factions, whether from within or without. He managed to form troops of creatures from different factions such as orcs, goblins, dark elves, cyclops, and even managed to convince the troops of the allied factions to join and give him complete loyalty, which more than one accepted, he said in a somewhat serious tone. Remembering how with the passage of time the troops of Risivim were increasing. Hades. Meanwhile, those soldiers who refused to swear loyalty to him died, although if I'm honest, I'm lucky about 4 or 3 refused to follow Risivim, he said seriously, remembering how most of the faction's troops joined Risivim's ranks. Zeus. But as he is slowly conquering the allied factions, Risivim uses a huge variety of demons, fallen, Asgardians and Yakes as slaves. However, regarding women, teenagers and even girls, they are only used as hex toys to satisfy his troops, he said in a serious tone, leaving a huge silence in the living room. Issei. What are the factions doing about that? He said, asked seriously, wanting to know if they at least did something to rescue those people that Risivim had as slaves. Poseidon. At least not that we know of. They did nothing but cry and lament over what they did to you, although there is one person who did that and managed to free 1 or 2 demons, fallen and Nordic, he said something serious, remembering the reputation that said person had. Issei. May I know who it is? He said, asked curiously, wanting to know if that person is a man or a woman, as well as wanting to know which faction he belongs to. Horus. That person is a demon woman. She appeared about 8 months ago, but despite her recent appearance, she achieved what the leaders as well as the DXD teams and the Hakuryuku team achieved, he said in a somewhat serious tone, remembering how he met that person as well as the other gods. Anubis. That woman managed to dismantle some Risivim lairs, in addition to freeing hundreds and hundreds of people whom she trained under her mantle. She does not work for any of the allied faction leaders or those of Team DXD or Hakuryuku, he said, while remembering long light blue hair. Hades. That woman is willing to dismantle Kulipath alone or with the help of the people she herself rescued and trained. They are loyal to her and only her, even if it means dying on the battlefield for her, they would do it, he said, somewhat seriously, remembering blue eyes. Zeus. Her name is Esdith, or as they call her, the General of Ice, he said, remembering the image of a 20-year-old woman with blue eyes and light blue hair. Issei. Wow, a woman is giving Risivim problems, something that makes me think that the factions are completely useless, plus Risivim must be very rusty and old. If he couldn't handle that woman, I don't even know her, but I think I like her already, he said with a small smile, having a little interest in meeting this Esdith, and why not give her a hand? Issei. Well, what about the dragons? He said, asked, wanting to know why the dragons didn't help the factions, or if they were actually with them. Poseidon. All the dragons from different mythologies disappeared. We haven't seen any with Risivim, so we rule out that they were allied with him, he said, since the dragons have been missing for a long time. Issei. An office. Why isn't she collaborating with the allied factions? He said, asked about the lowly dragon god or goddess. Who knew? She's also missing too, San, although from what Red OG-san told us, she or he, like Dragon Albion, are the disgrace of the dragon, she said, remembering the disappearance of the Infinity Dragon and the words that Great Red said about Office and the 2 celestial dragons. Issei. So that happened during my absence, he said in a serious tone, regretting not having noticed that Risivim was still alive. Issei. But what are Vali and the Sir Kyuute doing? He said, asked, wanting to know why neither of them did anything about what was happening currently. Brah. The Hakuryuku along with his team follow the orders of General Esdith. Well, the Sir Kyuute is completely useless and stupid. He does not compare to you in anything, and he has threatened all of them, saying that he will kill the Grimoire matriarch, the wife of the Mau Lucifer, and those children who are with you. He said something serious while pointing at Kunu and Milikas, however. Issei. HMPH, if that imbecile dares to touch a single hair on them he won't live to tell the tale, he said with a serious tone and a dark expression. Of course, those present felt an aura full of killing intent, which gave them a small chill. Although Issei chose to calm down, thinking about what he could do. Issei. Sigh, although there is something that smells bad to me, just a little cliché, he said something serious, while he began to think a little about the situation. Horus. We also think the same as your boy. For that reason, the gods of different mythologies are preparing in case that day comes, he said in a somewhat serious tone, knowing and having the feeling that Rissavam was planning something very big. Issei. In that case, if that happens, do not hesitate to ask for my help, he said with a firm tone, willing to help the gods. After that, Issei, like Kunu and Milikas, said goodbye to the gods who also did the same and then went to their respective kingdoms, although Hades gave Issei the key to the house before leaving. By the time the gods left, the three of them proceeded to see what the house was like, as well as choosing their rooms. After a few minutes, Issei noticed that the house had everything, be it things for the kitchen and the bathroom. He didn't need to buy anything since the house was practically complete, however. There was something he needed and he was a little thoughtful if Milikas and Kunu were going to need it or not. But as if it were a coincidence, both young people were coming down the stairs, so he looked out to say. Issei. Hey guys, you brought your clothes from the cabin, right? He said, looking at the yokai and the demon. Milikas. That's right, Nai-sama, we brought our clothes here, although to be honest, mine are already getting tight on me, he said, feeling his clothes getting a little tighter. Kunu. You're not the only one, Milikas. Nai. These clothes are starting to get tight on me too, she said in an understanding tone, feeling the clothes she was wearing pressing against her breasts and hips. Issei. Well, in that case, how about we go to the mall to buy clothes and have some fun? He said, with a smile, seeing how happy the two were. Kunu. Milikas. Hai, they exclaimed in unison with a big smile. Without wasting any more time, the three of them locked the windows and upon leaving Issei locked the door, although before leaving Issei had grabbed a bag of jewels that Hades had given him to look for a jewelry store and exchanged the jewels he had for money. While the three walked towards the city of Kuo, Issei listened attentively to what Kunu and Milikas said about what they did during the time the brown-haired boy was in purgatory. Both young people learned about Issei's betrayal of the factions through a news that spread throughout the supernatural world. Upon hearing this news, they went to discuss with their respective parents about what they heard. And just as the news said, searches and Yasaka had shown him different proofs that Issei had betrayed them. But still, neither of them believed what they saw in the holograms. Issei for his part was upset to know that there was more evidence that he betrayed the factions, but he calmed down when he remembered that his image as well as his name were already stained, so he had no reason to be upset, and that was in the past. After a few long minutes of having arrived at Kuo and having traveled almost a large part of that city, the three managed to find a jewelry store in which Issei exchanged the jewels he had for money. However, in that jewelry store they tried to scam him, which was not very smart on the part of the seller, who had no choice but to give him almost double what the jewels that the brown-haired man owned were worth. It was that or be sued, since there were many witnesses in that jewelry store. Although Issei chose to keep a large portion of the jewels to sell elsewhere to earn double or triple what they were really worth. After receiving the money, Issei proceeded to head to the Kuo Mall, along with Milikas and Kunu. After a few moments, the three arrived at the mall to just look for a clothing store, finding it a few minutes after entering the building. They only chose clothes they liked. Kunu grabbed a kimono or two, while Issei and Milikas opted for somewhat casual clothing, but apart from buying clothes, they also chose to buy underwear, since that was very necessary. When they finished shopping, Issei and Milikas covered Kunu, who put all the shopping bags in a pocket dimension. After that, Issei noticed that he had a lot of money left over, so he invited both young people to go to the arcade and then go to lunch at a restaurant. Later. After a while of fun and rest, we can see how Issei along with Milikas and Kunu were talking about trivial things. Issei for his part was enjoying the conversation he had with Kunu and Milikas, however. Out of nowhere a gap had formed in front of the three. Kunu and Milikas didn't notice that, although Issei had noticed it the moment it appeared. And quickly, the brown-haired boy grabbed both young men to get away from the gap, but a push from behind prevented him from doing that, and he went in the direction of the gap without having the possibility of stopping. But before passing through the gap, Issei managed to see out of the corner of his eye that the person responsible was none other than Office herself in her adult form. Office. Welcome back, darling. Somewhere else. We see how in the gap in which Issei along with Milikas and Kunu passed, they were taken to what appeared to be some kind of coliseum or combat arena. However, Issei saw how both young men were disappearing from the coliseum in particles of light, something he could not do anything about, and it bothered him a lot. But some lights were turned on. I could see how in the stands were the former and current patriarchs of different demonic houses, along with their heirs or heiresses of their respective clans. However, Issei looked around seeing that he was being surrounded by the Gremory, Citri, Vali's team, as well as Riser, Sererg, the Norse god of thunder Thor, and also Kisuk. However, Issei turned his gaze towards a balcony seeing the mass Seraphim, cadres, along with Yusaka and Aden. Although Issei noticed that Seraphil and Penemu were missing, which he found strange, but he didn't pay much attention to it. Issei. What the hell is going on here? He said asked with a serious but also annoyed tone, looking at the people around him. Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown in left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.